Welcome to Restoration Beyond the Couch, hosted by Dr. Lee Long. In this episode, Dr. Long interviews Dr. Tracy Carrington, a performance specialist with a wealth of experience in the pursuit of excellence. Dr. Carrington has been an athlete throughout her life, with experience at the high school, collegiate, Olympic trials, and professional levels. Her journey includes significant achievements as a pole vaulter at the University of Tennessee, where she learned firsthand the transformative power of mental training. After earning her doctorate in kinesiology, Dr. Carrington founded Mind Game Performance LLC, where she helps athletes, coaches, performing artists, and business professionals unlock their full potential. Join us as we explore Dr. Carrington's insights on the critical role of mental conditioning, resilience, and the tools needed to thrive both on and off the field. Your path to mental wellness starts here. Welcome, Dr. Tracy Carrington.
Oh, thanks.
It's good to have you.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Couch. Yeah, of course. Of course. Well, I wanted you to be here. I wanted to have this time because I think you are a remarkable human being, and I think you do some really cool things. And I would love our listeners to know more about who you are and what you do. And so can you describe for our listeners what it is that you do?
Oh, wow. This is like my elevator speech that I didn't practice, right? No. Okay, so I am a performance specialist. I'm not a clinical therapist. And I think that's where our relationship, where we've developed it over the years has been because I work specifically in the performance arena,
right?
Whether that's with athletes or business professionals or performing artists, helping them work on the mental skills of performance. But when you're doing that, often things come up, clinical things come up that go outside of what I specialize in. And so coming back to you, because I also think you're remarkable at what you do, and why I'm actually sitting here is because I can remember seeing your work before I actually ever met you, because I had yes, because I had clients and that were working with both of us. They were working with you from a clinical perspective, right. Working with me from performance perspective. And I remember just being like, no, wait, who are you working with? Because I liked the things the conversations that you were having with them, and they really overlapped well with the work that I was also trying to do. And so finally, I think it came down to, I was like, I got to meet this guy. Right. And then, that's how we met. But I got into this field specifically because I was an athlete at University of Tennessee, and I came in and they had pretty high expectations of what they thought I was supposed to be doing. And that for sure, I really underperformed. And it wasn't a physical thing, but it was really mental. And so they made me go work with the performance specialist who is on their staff and is the head of their kind of mental training. And I guess you could say it made a pretty
made a lasting
impression. Because for so long, if I performed well, I wasn't necessarily aware of what were the things I was doing that was helping me perform well. And so having someone who could teach me those things, help me become aware of where I was derailing myself. And the things when I was performing at my best. And so that kind of snowballed into, all right, I think this is what I want to do.
I love that. And I will say you started in the beginning there and said, I'm not a clinical person. One of the things that I so respect about you, and you've never wavered on this, is that you are so clear in your own mind. You're clear about where you draw your lines as to what is clinical and what is performance. And some of those lines I might say, well, I think you might be able to it makes sense for you to step here, but that's not your line and you don't.
Yeah.
And I just think that's really remarkable.
Well, I think, that's important part of any good work.
Sure,
and you and I have had long conversations about just from an ethical perspective. To me, it's bad business, right? If I'm trying to do work with someone that goes outside of, what my training is, what my expertise is, I'm doing harm there. And specifically because our boundaries are really different in the work that we do. I travel with teams, I go into their practices, And so, if I was going into that environment and I'm working on really deep clinical things, now I'm becoming part of the distraction in that. And so that's where it becomes so important that I have good relationships with, clinical practices like restoration, because I can I can keep those somewhat separate. So I know, okay, this person is getting the clinical work they're
Right.
done that they need to do. But then now I can step in and help them in those moments. Okay, this is the time where we need to set that aside so that we can stick the landing, so
Right.
that we can be ready to react to the gun, so that we can get our mind right to go compete and perform.
Right.
But if they're not doing that work, I don't work with them.
Yeah.
That's another one of my standards. Like if something comes up in our session and I recognize that they need some of that additional work that's not mine, and whether that's they need to go meet with a dietitian, they need to go work, meet with an orthopedic surgeon because maybe they're kind of, ignoring a really bad injury, or they need a clinical therapist. If they are unwilling to do that, then to me, continuing to work with them is just, it's bad business.
Yeah.
I'm not doing a good service for them.
Right. And that makes sense because, sometimes I think about, when you sign up for a trainer, let's say like a coach, and they say, we need 3 months. I need a 3-month minimum, because if you're going to see progress, it's going to take you X amount of time.
Yeah.
And so I need to make sure that we're making that commitment to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you're doing the same thing. If you're going to see a true mental, like, mindset shift, then I need to know that you're committed to get all the ancillary I would imagine from your perspective, the ancillary things out of our way to make sure we make progress here.
Yeah. And I'm sure this is the same for you in your practice, where you have check-ins with clients to kind of, I will make light of it, usually to say, well, this is usually where we're either going to move forward or you're going to fire me. Because this is kind of our point of, okay, we're going to start making steps here and making some changes. And if they're unwilling to continue to work with someone that's not putting in the work and the effort, then again, that doesn't really benefit anyone. So I usually won't continue working in those situations.
Yeah. What was your college sport?
So I pole vaulted in college.
Right.
Yeah. But I actually, funny enough, I started out as a distance runner at University of Colorado. So I was a walk-on distance runner for University of Colorado. And at the time, I did not know how good they were. I mean, it's kind of comical when you think about it, because I came in and they had just won the national championship for cross country. And I mean, this is before social media. Okay. No judgment here, people. Right? This is before the internet. Okay. It was big.
We're dating ourselves. I'm kidding.
I know, but it was before it was easily accessed the way, right now people can just Google and look things up. And so it wasn't, my sister ran for University of Texas. And so I was very familiar with kind of the Southwest Conference at that time. But I wasn't familiar with, Colorado, apart from what a cool school. And I love skiing, and
you're right, and I know they're in Boulder.
And I know they're good. So I want to go do something different. I want to go beyond. And so I walked on to this team, a team that, is full of, women who are on the, like, in the Hall of Fame, and, Olympians, and are just unbelievable. And so I was barely getting to travel to events. I mean, like, scrapping by, like, maybe occasionally they'd take me along. And that's when I saw women pole vaulting. And I'd always wanted to pole vault, but at the time, I'm going to date myself again, women weren't allowed to pole vault. Right.
Oh, really?
And so when I was in high school, I really wanted to pole vault because I had a gymnastics background, and the mechanics of it just made sense.
Yeah.
And I saw it, and I had a good upper body strength. I could do a bunch of pull-ups, more pull-ups than most of the guys could do. And so I thought, like, I could do that. Like, I know how to, the mechanics just made sense in my head. And so I went to the coach and said, hey, I want to pole vault. And the coach said, women can't pole vault. And at which point I clearly was like, hey, like, my dad said women can do anything they want to do. And the coach was like, no, like, really, you're not allowed to pole vault. And so it wasn't until I was in college and I would go to these meets and I'd start seeing these women pole vaulting, and they weren't jumping very high. Like,
Mm-hmm.
to give a reference, I think, at the Olympics, it was, high 16s were, what was scoring. These girls were jumping 9 feet.
Whoa.
Right. And that's like, I mean, there are girls in high school, you go to a high school meet, you're going to see girls at 11, 12, and really good ones at 13 or 14 feet now.
Wow.
So 9 feet was like such a low level of athletic performance, but they're scoring points for the team. So in my mind, I thought, well, maybe if I do that, Colorado doesn't have any pole vaulters, then I could, actually get to travel and hang out with my friends and do that. And so I went home that summer and started vaulting. And
Sorry, I have to
yeah,
pause
go
you.
ahead.
Here's what I love
Yeah.
is you're already like, what a problem solver.
Oh,
Like you're thinking like how you approach this is from such a problem solving. I love that. And that's one of the things that I really love about your work is that it truly is like, okay, let's get in here. We're not going to be, you weren't going to be held down by you can't do something.
yeah. Let's figure this out.
I love that. Sorry to interrupt.
No. I love it. That's good. Yeah. I know I'm rambling on that.
No, this is brilliant.
So.
Yeah.
So, I saw these women pole vaulting. I went back. My dad found a great coach in the Abilene, I think he was in Abilene. And there's another coach in Fort Worth I did a lot of work with, who's kind of the guru here. And suddenly I went from kind of being this walk-on to being ranked nationally as a vaulter. Like my jumps were up there good enough to go to nationals. And so, suddenly schools were looking at me from a recruiting standpoint. Tennessee was really strong pole vault school and kind of field event at the time, whereas Colorado was more focused on the distance running. And so the coach just wasn't interested in pursuing that, but Tennessee was. So the expectation when I came into Tennessee was you're supposed to go to nationals, you're supposed to score at nationals. Yeah. And I didn't do that first year. And so then that was kind of where it snowballed into pole vaulting, I guess.
And so to translate to today, so Tennessee would be sort of like the NIL money, whereas Boulder would not have been.
Yeah, no. And
there wasn't any of that then.
No.
That's brand new.
No, but they definitely were using at the time, because it became so popular that women were pole vaulting. So Tennessee was definitely excited to have good vaulters, and any of the programs were, because that was where the media attention was at the time. It was like, women are vaulting. So I came in at a great time. Yeah. They treated me really well. It's an incredible athletic program. So yeah.
Well, and it set you on a really cool trajectory where you're not only did it change your life, but that moment in time is changing like the world. And I'm not being hyperbolic by saying that, because if I'm not mistaken, you work with folks all over the world.
I do. And it's been a strange transition, I guess, that I didn't really even conceive was possible.
Yeah.
That my practice could go to that level. So I think, we have a lot of the internet type, whether it's Zoom or, FaceTime, WhatsApp. I mean, those things have just opened up. At the time, when I started, Skype was huge in opening up the world. And because I don't have some of the same clinical boundaries that, clinical practitioners have, I could go and pursue that. But that being said, I still had to make sure in each of those places I had good clinical references, so that if I'm in another country and something comes up, I have people that I can get those athletes to.
That's got to be a really difficult thing to sort out, because how do you know, like, first of all, how do you make contact with them? And then how do you know that they're, I hate to say it this way, but how do you know that I'll say it this way. How do you know if they're going to provide a service that is effective for your athletes?
For what I want. So I don't accept a job until I know I have that in place. Like that's kind of one.
Okay, people, now you see why I love this.
No, I mean,
that's seriously,
that's part of my criteria is making sure that those resources are in place, so that, and so usually, the times like going to New Zealand, I made sure I had contacts there in place to know, like, if things come up, I have resources there to get them to where they need to go. Paris, same thing. So I had people readily available. And then the same thing with the just the options of Skype and Zoom and FaceTime, that has helped tremendously. But as you know, sometimes you need people on the ground, to help get people where they need to go. So I haven't been to a place yet where I've had that dilemma, but that's always in the forefront of my head when I accept a job, is making sure those pieces are in place before, jumping in.
Sure. And that's there's so much integrity involved in that from my perspective.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And also you're setting the athlete up for success, and you're setting yourself up for success. But again, I think that there's a lot of integrity involved in that, because a lot of times I think that we in this type of profession, the helping profession, will look at something and we'll think, gosh, I want to see you do well. And sometimes there may be the temptation to get ahead of ourselves. And
and I think starting out, I mean, it wasn't perfect.
Sure.
And I think, like most people can say, I made mistakes that, and I was fortunate that they weren't life-altering mistakes, but little ones to go like, man, there's a better way to do this, and I need to figure out a better way to do this.
Again, with the problem solving.
Well, I love a good challenge, focused mindset, right? Like, what's the challenge? How do we figure this out? Let's do it.
Yeah. So what's been one of the most intriguing, like amazing things that you've experienced in this role?
I would say like a really cool journey that I got to kind of be on with a particular athlete, and I can't get too specific.
No, of course not.
Was an athlete who, for those of you who don't know about the Olympics, it's not just a 1 year thing, right? They are on this 4-year campaign. And for some of them, it's even an 8-year campaign, because they were on it for the last one and they didn't make it, or they did, and they didn't perform the way they wanted to. So it can be this like really long, and just think about that for a moment. Like, when's the last time, a lot of people have had a goal that they've gone after for 8 years and sacrificed everything, right? They've sacrificed time with their family. They've sacrificed time with their friends, the toll that their bodies had, the discipline that they have to like just go in and consistently pursuing that goal. So, to be on a true journey with this one client who was like right on the edge of even, getting there. And it kind of was looking like it wasn't going to happen. But then, some pieces and some just like final, like clutch performances that just kind of helped in the overall ranking that ended up allowing this individual to actually make it. And so, then there's this excitement of like, and having to shift from the goal being like, okay, I just want to make it to the Olympics, to, okay, now we want to perform at the Olympics. Right. And so we had to pivot really quick, because didn't even find out that this particular individual was going to be making it until pretty close to go time. Right. Oh, wow. And so now we're having to, while we're celebrating the accomplishment of like, we made it, but now we're having to quickly, right. So for 8 years, it's been a goal to just make it,
to get there.
And now we have to, okay, we don't want to just get there. Now we want to perform. And so then to have that athlete be able to go, and, one of the things that was said was, it was the first time I was able to stand in my nerves and be okay with them. I can't say I was comfortable, but like I could stand in them. Like I could stay there in my nerves and be okay. And so athlete actually performed really well, made it to the finals. And it was huge. And so to just like get to witness that and know all the things that they go through, even just like little things. So just trying to get tickets so a significant other can actually make it and see the competition, because the tickets are all sold out. And so, little stressors like that would probably undo a lot of people, and they're having to, manage that, and, the food that they're eating, and the schedules of the buses, and sleep hygiene, and just the roller coaster of not making it, gonna make it, not making it, going. I mean, we went, going through this whole grieving, this grieving process of like, I'm not gonna make it. Oh, I might make it. Oh, I'm not gonna make it. I might. I mean, that was really, that was remarkable. And I'm not trying to take away from the other athletes that I also got to support, but that
Sure.
one just was one that really, stood out for sure.
Well, sure, because it's you're part of the team,
Yeah.
and you're part of this athlete's team, and I'm sure that every athlete at that level has a team of people.
Yeah.
I'm certain of it.
Yeah.
That they have that it
Right.
takes to help them achieve at the level that they're achieving.
Right. And I meant from other athletes that I'm on their team.
No, I get it.
Yeah. Okay.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
Because it's
because each one had a different story that
absolutely,
they were. Yeah.
Absolutely. And yet there's certain aspects of being on certain teams with certain individuals where it's like the rise and the fall, the excitement, it doesn't take away anything from anybody else. It's just that left such an impression.
Yeah, for sure. But I think for me too, like I just, it's not even just about like the high level. Cause a lot of times it's like, oh, you went to the Olympics, but like, last night I was at a JV, volleyball game, and I'd just done a presentation with this team. So now I'm kind of seeing like, are they actually implementing the things we talked about? And I'm seeing them kind of starting out and they're on this roll and it's looking good. And then I start seeing them, some mistakes happen and it's spiraling and it's like, all right, this is going to be interesting. Let's kind of see. And so to see, 14, 15-year-olds struggling and trying to work through that, like I also get great satisfaction out of moments like that, to see them like fighting back, teaching people like how to have courage, because that's a big one we talk about is, courage. And I always quote Princess Diaries, like it's not the absence of fear, actually it's not, she says this in there, but I think it's Maya Angelou's quote. But I always quote it from Princess Diaries because it's funnier. Sorry. Okay. That's not appropriate. But that it's not that absence of fear, but rather, that there's something more important than that fear. So teaching them to face their fear.
Right. Well, it's not courage if there's no fear.
Absolutely.
There's no bravery if there's no fear. It's just I'm walking through something that's, in my experience, I guess I would say normal. Yeah. Right. But when we experience fear, like you're saying, the courage is I have to grab something extra courage to take with me to go through this, because otherwise I wouldn't. Yeah. I love that.
I was listening to one of my really good friends does another podcast.
Nice.
And I was listening to a conversation between, and I know both of them really well. And one of the guys works for the Diamondbacks, and he was describing mental performance and kind of like how training mental performance. And he said, it's not, mental performance is not positive thinking. Right. It's
exactly.
Mental performance is positive action, kind of regardless of what you're thinking. Right. And so I think that's a big part of the practice of, and the way that I like to approach it too, is like, what are the actions you're going to take? Right. Because we can't control what happened, but we can control how we respond to that. And I like that because I think you and I have a very similar approach.
Spot on with that. I was just thinking that the study that we finished a couple of years ago with depression. Yeah. That's one of the things that I talk about this often, because I feel like it was such a monumental outcome, is that problem solving. That's why I love that you're always problem solving. We talk about that a lot in our conversations about our work. But problem solving helped people who were struggling with depression, who had chronic depression, 15 years of intractable depression, that teaching them how to problem solve, not for other things, not for the environment per se, but for themselves. What do I want out of me? It's just like what you're talking about with your friend on their podcast, talking about, it's really about how do I want to behave? Yeah. In other words, in your world,
which you can control.
Exactly.
That you have control over, right? The actions you take.
Exactly.
You are in control of your actions.
Right. So in your world, it's how do I want to perform? Yeah. In my world, it's how do I want to behave? Yeah. But we're saying the exact same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which is why I think we complement each other.
Absolutely.
Well, in that, because it's speaking that same language.
Right.
So no, go ahead. I was just saying, like, often when I know I have a client who's working with a clinical therapist, I usually want to find out, like, well, what did they say? Or what was their feedback? And I like to say that too, finding out what does a coach say? Because I'm trying to figure out how to work with, what they have versus like crashing against it. Like, I don't want to go like, wait, this one said this and this one said this. So, and sometimes it's even interpreting like, okay, well, this might be how they were, meaning for this to be used. Cause I'm sure, as you know, sometimes you think you've had a really clear message with the client, and then later you come back in, you're like, wow, okay, that's different than what I thought you got from that,
Right. I thought I said these things that over here, but yet it got interpreted. Sure.
Yeah.
And that's, we talk about proprioception. I mean, I know in your world with athletes, you talk about proprioception. It's how does my body move through gravity? How do I navigate gravity with my own body? I think is maybe a gross way of saying what proprioception is. And in psychology, we look at it as what is my perceptual understanding? And that's that metaphysical proprioception, I call it, is that how do I ingest the world and through what filter do I see it? And, you watch somebody run and you think, oh gosh, they don't have proprioception. They don't see like that they look like Phoebe from Friends running. And they may be, flailing about. And we sometimes see that in the perceptual understanding, psychologically speaking. And that's how we gauge where somebody is perceptually, is by, wait, how did you hear that? How did that work out? And so that, again, instinctually on your part, I love that that's how you walk this through with people, is you're working with proprioception, but also that perceptual understanding.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think too, that's, where I think ours crosses, but it complements.
Yeah. The way that I really like to work with athletes, and I'm sure you do too, is there's that top down approach, but then there's also the bottom up. And so the top down being, the mental skills to help manage performance, but then the bottom up being, how do I manage my body to manage my mind? Right. Because, sometimes we're the fainting goat, right? Right. And if you haven't seen videos of a fainting goat, then you need to look it up.
Please stop and Google that.
Stop and Google it, because it's funny, but it's actually kind of sad. Because they have such a heightened state of a stress response that they pass out. And part of why, because in my mind, I was having this conversation with a client who works with a lot of horses and things like that. And so we were having this conversation like, hey, don't be the fainting goat. And she's like, yeah, it's really sad about those fainting goats, because they breed them so that if like coyotes attack the herd, then that one will pass out. The coyote will get that instead of injuring 8 or 10 of them. So they really are the sacrificial goat in that herd to kind of protect the rest of the thing. But the response being, in performance, we sometimes get the white knuckles, that heightened state of stress. And so a big part is helping, my clients and athletes understand what those responses are and then how they can manage that. And the cool part is they're athletes. So they really buy into that. Like, hey, you're an athlete. Like, here's a new technique of how to manage your body, whether that's, learning how to manage their eyesight, right? So because they'll get into a really heightened state of stress, their eyes will be really sharp. So even just like learning how to relax their vision as, a way, as a relaxation technique. And that has been, it's fun, right? I think it's fun working them from, kind of both sides.
Absolutely. Because some people, like you said, some people are going to be more geared for the top down, the logic to the practical. And then other people are going to be more geared towards the bottom up, which is the experience to then the logic. I think it's great. When we think about all these athletes that you're working with and this high level of performance, you don't only work with athletes, right? You work with executives who are high level, high performers.
Absolutely.
So how does that translate?
Well, do you want me to first share how I got into that? Because I think that one's this story always kind of makes me laugh. So I was working with the son of a business professional, so to speak. And so I'd been doing work with him, and he started kind of asking like, hey, do you ever work with, kind of business type clients? And I was like, no, like that's not really my training. It's not really what I'm good at. I don't, no, I don't really know how I would even do that. And he's like, I think you could do this. So here I have this guy who's like, he's having to convince me, like kind of sell me that he should be my client. And I'm like, okay, like, I mean, we can try this out. Let's kind of see how this goes. And from that, as I started working with him, that was when I began to realize a lot of the crossover between that. So I don't ever claim to be an expert in business, but I do understand people. I do understand performance. I do understand helping get the best out of performance. I do. And I think one of the things I feel like is my purpose is helping people get the right people that they need. Right.
Yes. Which is how you approach the athlete of saying, if I need a dietitian, if I need a mental health, a clinical person,
absolutely,
if I need an orthopedic surgeon, you started off with that. It's like, you have to have your team.
Right.
But what you're doing, I think, is what you're saying.
Yep.
At least is what I've experienced in working with you is that you also take that person and say, okay, you're the hub. You need to get the people that are going to, let's help you find the people that are going to help you.
Yeah. And a lot of that, I mean, similarly, and we've talked about this, is just by asking questions and finding out kind of what is going on, where are their struggles. And then that's usually where I'm better able to identify like who they need, and get them in that direction. And one of the things I've always respected about you is when you don't know something, you'll say, I don't know. Right. And like, hey, let me check on that, or let me ask someone else. And I think we kind of share that similar thing. Like I'm not afraid to say, hey, I don't know, but let me look into that. Let me research that. It's research background. I geek out on the science part of it. So
that makes two of us. And I appreciate you saying that. It's to me being like, I always want to be a learner. I always want to learn more and know more. And, when will it be enough? When will you be to the point where you've learned enough? The answer is more.
Right.
Like, no. I don't ever want to stop learning. And I feel like you're the same way.
Yeah.
And knowing that we can never know everything.
Yep.
It's like,
that's wisdom, right?
Right. And part of the beauty of you're exactly right.
Well, I'm saying that because there was this children's book that I would always read to my son, and it was the Cookies Bite-Sized Life Lessons. Did you ever have that one in your mix? But it was great because it would have these, kind of core values. It'd be like, optimistic, oh yay, I still have, half a cookie left. Pessimistic. Oh no, I only have half a cookie left. But wisdom was the last page of this book, and I always liked it because it was a way to teach my son about kind of different kind of core principles. And in wisdom it said, I used to think I knew everything there was to know about baking cookies. Now I realize I only know about a chip's worth. And so to me, like when I think of being wise and having wisdom is recognizing how little you know and realizing that you constantly have ways to learn and grow. And so if that's what I expect my clients to do, then I think we have to be doing the same thing as well, and constantly being, looking at ourselves, figuring out how can we learn and grow and do better. And to quote, my mentor, he would always say, green and growing. And if not, you're just dead fruit on the vine, ready to be picked. And so he was like, gotta be green and growing. And I always like that. So it's like, anytime I find myself maybe stuck in my ways where I'm thinking like, oh, well, like I know this. It's usually where I have to do some quick self-check and go, okay, we got some green and grind to do here, baby.
Because we don't want to be picked from the vine.
No, we're about to get slaughtered. And
but the thing that to me that's so fun about this is that we can call it wisdom. I would agree. But
I wasn't saying we're so wise. That wasn't what I was meaning. It just made me think of that.
I think,
that book.
But I think to acknowledge that is appropriate.
Yeah.
Is to say that we have grown to a point. I've grown to a point in my career. You've grown to a point in your career to where we are wise enough to say, because wisdom is a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
We're not saying we're the wisest of all, like that we're somehow a god. No, absolutely not. But what I think you are saying, and I'm concurring with, is that we've both grown to a point where we're wise enough to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it takes some humility to say that.
Absolutely.
And I think that for me, part of the I don't know that's exciting is the idea that I get to call up a buddy.
Yeah.
Right? I get to call up Tracy and go, oh my gosh, what's your thought on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we get to have a fun hour-long conversation.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
That it's like that we get to
Right.
to share with each other what we know,
Mm-hmm.
which I feel like it makes both of us better. And then it's a piece of saying like it's a piece of connecting, which I think is really cool.
And I think that, goes back to even kind of the corporate consulting that you're talking about, where I think sometimes leaders, whether it's a leader of a practice, whether it's the leader of a, Division I team or a professional team, whether it's a CEO, sometimes there's this like pressure of like, oh, I'm in charge, so I'm supposed to know.
Right.
And so like one of the first things, and my research for my dissertation was on coaches and job transition. So how do like new head coaches come in and like create a program, get the right personnel, build a foundation, develop trust, all those aspects. And so when, when you get to that top, one of the big things that came out from that research was this idea of having outside people that you could go to and talk to. And, I have my own private practice and it's just me. And so it would be really easy to just be on my own little island, like, okay.
Yeah.
I should have all the answers. But I quickly found when I acted in that way, I didn't do very good work. My work wasn't as quality. And so for me, like having like a good network of people, having you that I can text me like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, give me, what am I missing here? What am I not seeing? Has helped me be better at what I do. And like as an athlete, I tell, having been a former athlete, when I work with athletes, I'd say there's a reason why we have coaches, right? Because they help us see things that we can't see in ourselves when we're performing.
Right.
And I think the same in professional practice, whether that's, a business or, whatever aspect, having other people who can ask you good questions, right? I like to surround myself with the people who ask good questions of me and challenge me in that way to think about, well, why am I doing that? And what is my process and my thought through that, so that that helps bring out my best. So
absolutely,
you're in my circle.
Thank you. And as you are in mine. And what you're talking about is that here we are, green and growing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that we're not static on the vine.
Yep.
If I were to say, like, because the whole premise of our podcast here is beyond the couch.
Yeah.
It's saying, like we want to always hopefully leave people with something that they can do on their own. The thing that really resonated with me is you saying that this athlete found that place to stand in their nerves. They didn't love it.
No.
But they said, I found a place that I could stand in my nerves.
Absolutely.
And be content maybe, or okay with it.
Okay with it. Yeah. Okay with it. I have a colleague who works for the USOC, and the way he describes it is, he said, imagine you show up to this party and, you're having such a good time and everyone's there. And then that one person that you really didn't want to see shows up. How do you respond in that situation? Like, can you still in that space, like be okay with that person? Or do you just like leave the party completely? And so, yeah, when this client said that, like I was able to stand in my nerves, that was just like, it's still, I got goosebumps if you can see it.
You're telling the whole story.
I know, it's just like, it gives goosebumps too, because it's uncomfortable, and I think that's the key, that a big one when we talk to athletes, a lot of times, when they come in, they're wanting to get rid of the nerves and the discomfort. Right. And I'm like, it's not that we're getting rid of I feel like I'm quoting a TV show on this, and it was a sports psychologist on a TV show. And she was telling her client, it's not that you're getting rid of the minds, because he said, I feel like I'm walking through a minefield. Yes. She said, no, you're not getting rid of the minefield. You're just learning how to navigate it better.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I feel like that, and that's, I love to use Ted Lasso or whatever. Like right. I will use all sorts of anything I can to kind of, have a point resonate with it. Yeah. Make it relatable. But I liked that analogy of thinking about when we're trying to perform mentally. It doesn't mean that you don't have those feelings. You're human.
Right.
So it's normal to have fear. It's normal to have doubt. It's normal to be insecure. But now what do I do so I can actually be in that space and still do what I want to do and perform,
Right.
that doesn't control me, right? I control
Exactly.
myself in that space.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because that's what we have control over.
Yeah.
Getting rid of the minds is in essence trying to control the
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah. You're like, I want this great little perfect.
Right. And we
Yeah.
can't do that. That's
No.
why we talk about managing depression,
Yeah.
managing
Yeah.
anxiety. We don't make it go away. I remember in college, one of my college roommates he was a bodybuilder and he was into martial arts.
Mm.
And I remember we would train together and I would say, okay, I really want you to help me get rid of my flinch. Like, I don't want to flinch if somebody tries to punch at my head. And he's like, dude, you're an idiot. And he was right. That was an idiotic
that's a
thing.
normal response, right?
Yeah, and he was like, I don't want to take that away. You don't want to take that away.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself in that moment, I was like, you know what? This is actually a greater principle, is that's a God-given gift to me, right, to flinch or to move, because it's going to keep me safe. Anxiety is a God-given gift to us to tell us something isn't right.
Right.
So knowing that we have that, but we don't have to then crater as a result. Like your friend was saying, how do I handle if a person that I don't like or is really troublesome for me shows up in an environment? How do I handle me?
Yep.
And I think that we, in our culture, I think we tend to say, let's make the environment more suitable to you.
Yeah.
When in reality, what I hope for is that we say, how do I make myself more, what's my word? Able, well, I can't think of the word, but how do I make myself more able to handle the environment?
Yeah. I had a coach who, it was a video that we were watching from, it was when I was doing one of the coaching workshops. And he said, athletes are environmental. A lot of athletes are environmental. If the environment's right, not right, they don't know how to perform. It's like, well, regardless of the environment, they got to learn how to perform right in spite of that challenge and tough environment. And so I think that's kind of the trajectory of what the work that we're both trying to do.
Absolutely.
With people.
Athletes are doing it on the playing field, and the people that are darkening our doors here are doing it on life's playing field.
Yeah.
But the athletes are doing it on life's playing field as
well.
They
are as well, for sure.
And so it permeates all sides of it.
Absolutely.
But you're right. You look at, like, I'm going to pick out a guy like Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that guy is like Gumby in any environment.
So flexible and adaptable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the key to mental health is flexibility.
Absolutely.
The key to pathology is rigidity. Mm-hmm. And that's true on both sides, either physical or the metaphysical.
Yeah.
So,
we think about resilience, right? Is, how much the ability to withstand that pressure and in that environment. And so there's a lot of factors that allow people to be resilient and to bend. Right. My sensei would always say, in life, you need to be like those trees that, oh gosh,
willow.
A willow tree.
Yeah.
It's like in life, you got to be like a willow tree. He's like, grounded, deep roots, but flexible that you don't break when the wind blows on you. And,
I love that.
Yeah. And so
such a great visual.
It is such a great visual.
Yeah.
Because it's like there's strength in the roots, but also like the storms, right? They come. That's part of life. I often will say to clients, like, how boring if life was like easy, right? I mean, if you knew everything was just going to go perfect, you wouldn't appreciate, the good moments as well. And so it's part of being able to, enjoy the climb.
Absolutely. I think we were built for that.
Yeah.
And we were built to not seek out those challenges, but we were built for those challenges to, for us to enjoy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So, well, we find great satisfaction, right?
Oh my gosh.
There's nothing greater than going after something, pouring your heart and soul. And I had, I think it was my mentor said, because that's living, right? Yes. That's really living when you can invest your whole self, into something and go in and, you're it's to quote Roosevelt, right? That your face is marred with dust and blood, and at the end, you may have been defeated, but
you tried valiantly.
Valiantly, dared greatly.
Yeah. I love that quote. That is,
I did too. That's
one of my favorites.
That's one I often use. In fact, I was doing an interview yesterday, surprisingly, with Runner's World, and they were asking me about injury and kind of like promoting when we give so much attention to people who have been injured, and compete while they're injured versus those who, kind of pull themselves off. And I was like, man, it's a lot, psychologically a lot tougher for an athlete to pull themselves out, right, of a performance.
Right.
I was doing this interview with Runner's World about injured athletes, and she was asking me, why is it that we give so much, we glorify someone competing, with a broken leg, through a marathon. And I said, well, I guess I'm interested in who is it that's glorifying it? Is it, are the people that are actually in the arena, or is it the fans in the stands? Like, who is it that's doing that? Is it the coaches that are glorifying that?
Right.
Because
the critics.
Yeah. Or is it the critics that are saying, oh, this or that? Because, we saw that with, Simone Biles when she had the twisties and had to pull herself out. There were a lot of critics at first, whereas I saw that and I was like, wow,
that
took so much courage, so much to do what she did.
Sure.
I mean, like, I can't, the level of respect that I had for that, and doing that on that level was, it's incredible.
Yeah. And the level of consideration, the level of self-care, like self-compassion.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's a term that I don't think we truly appreciate, is that, do we have self-compassion?
Because for a lot of, when you think about high performers, I think there's this conception of we're robots and they just go in and they're humans, right? And so a big part of, even I think a big section of my work is teaching people self-care, good self-care. We talk about balance a lot, and I say, balance is an active process, right? So if you go too far in one direction, right? If you get tipped too far in one direction, then you have to make, a move to regain balance in the other direction. So, and that's true with work, right? If, you see this with the accounting guys, right? During tax time, they are like, hey, don't talk to me. No, I can't go to this party. No, I'm not taking my kids on spring break anywhere. I mean, they are in until tax season's over.
Right.
And then they have a big blowout, thing after. To me, that's great self-care. And, when I look at, some of my athletes, and especially now that more sports have become professionalized and it's a business, so you see these seasons getting extended longer and longer. And so actively getting them to, what are you doing to step away from this to recover? Because, a huge percentage of elite performance is recovery, right? Mental, emotional, physical recovery. And so a lot of times the athletes will look at like maybe just the physical, but then they may not be doing the things, or performers, people in general. And I'm sure you see that as well, right?
All the time. And I think about when I was running marathons, one of the things that my coach taught me early on, but maybe more in the middle of my training, was how to recover when running downhill. And I just remember when he started talking to me about that, I was like, again, this extends to the metaphysical, is that we don't always get to stop, climb into an ice bath, sit there for a few minutes, go to the sauna. We don't always get those times of recovery, but can we find active recovery in the process of even in the process of our sport? I remember that was such a pivotal moment for me. That next marathon, I think I took like 45 minutes off of my original time, which I thought was pretty incredible. But it was cool too. This, as an aside, I was running down a hill in that marathon that we had really been talking about.
And you're thinking that.
I was thinking it. And this man comes up behind me out of nowhere. He was an older guy, and he was running, and he was like, "Hey, let your brakes off." And it was almost like
Yeah.
the same thing that my coach and I had been talking about.
Yeah.
So he kept saying, don't put on your brakes. Just let
relax
yourself glide
and let
through
yourself
it.
go.
And this older guy kept come through, and he's like, hey, let your brakes off. Like, just flow down the hill. And it was almost like he was like a little angel that got dropped down for me, but it was really neat.
He gave you perspective, right?
Exactly.
Someone outside that's saying like, hey.
Which is why we have to have community, which is why we need a team. Which is like why we were talking about neither of us like to operate solo or individual.
Yeah, no. I mean, we are a piece of the puzzle. We are not the only piece of the puzzle.
That's
it. Yeah.
I hope our listeners, I hope that they can take a perspective from you that it's truly about being comfortable in the environment, or you finding your own sense of comfort in you, not trying to change the environment, which I think is brilliant. It's the idea that we have to have that sense of self-compassion. Are we willing to throw ourselves out and give it a shot? It's that idea of balance and recovery.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
I'm sure I'm missing other amazing gems. But
get gold nuggets that are hidden in there. We'll both look back and go like, oh, and this one. No, this.
Exactly.
This was also good. No, I always learn so much from this. It's good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
This has been a lot of fun for me, so thanks.
Ditto.
If you found value in our discussion and wish to uncover more about the fascinating world of mental wellness, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where Dr. Long will continue to delve into empowering therapies and strategies for mental wellness. Your journey to understanding and embracing mental health is just beginning, and we're excited to have you with us every step of the way. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and remember to celebrate restored freedom as you uncover it.